I went to dinner with a group of CEOs, and I ended up at the end of the table with a chatty guy who seemed curious and in love with meeting new people. I'm an introvert, so I warm up pretty slowly, but the questions coming from this guy fit the bill. They were both interesting and meaningful, and he asked me, if I had $100 million to my name, what would I do with it? He said, most people can't answer that question, and frankly, it's because they're self-focused. To become other-focused, we can now see billions of people in need, and the resources that we need to help them are only a few mindset shifts away. Darren Jacklin is one of the most successful corporate trainers in the nation and sits on the board of directors of eXp World Holdings and other publicly traded companies. He's truly a global philanthropist and enjoys traveling worldwide, promoting Elevate to Educate, a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to ending human trafficking. Darren says, my success is somebody else's miracle, which is a mindset that I love because it draws success and resources to us from a place of need rather than pleasure or indulgence. Marcus Aurelius said that life is long if you know how to use it. Well, Darren is helping me see life differently, and I want to share his philosophy with you. Hey, here's Darren Jacklin. You don't eat meat.
I eat fish or chicken, yes.
Fish or chicken.
I do, yeah.
Okay. Health choice, personal choice?
Yeah, it affects my energy level.
Meat affects your energy level.
I get really tired.
Really?
Been that way all my life. Yeah, I noticed it. If I eat a hamburger or something, I get tired.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's not the carbs. It's not the. It's the beef. It's the meat.
It's the beef, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think I've been also told it's my blood type as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that was there was a correlation there.
Yeah.
Well, we know you are all about your health and all about your energy because you just summited Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
So tell us that story. Tell us how you.
Yeah. So I, 48 years. I'm 51 now, but at age 48, I realized I was overweight, traveling all the time all over the world. And so what happened was I wanted to get into shape. I wanted to start to change my life. And so I started to hike in Vancouver, Canada, started hiking in a hiking group. And then what happened was I started posting and documenting on social media my progress I was making because I released 43 pounds in weight.
You say you released 43 pounds
Yes.
of weight, and you didn't say you lose it because there's a difference there.
Yeah, so when you lose something, the human brain wants to go find it again, wants to locate it again. So if you lose weight, your brain will want to go find the weight again. And usually you up and down, right? So when you release it, you're programming your subconscious mind to say, I've released it, it's gone for good or gone forever.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you're releasing the weight, you're hiking. And
Yeah. And I was posting on social media, and a friend of mine, Aaron Kleinman, reached out to me and he said, hey, can we jump on a 15-minute Zoom call, just catch up? So we jump on a Zoom video call, and he's like, hey, I've been following you on your social media channels. Notice you've been releasing all this weight, your body's transforming, you're changing, people are coming with you, hiking from all over the world. Would you consider climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, East Africa with me? And I said, absolutely not. And he's like, why would you say that? I said, because I'm not an athlete. I don't have that. That's just not me. I'm not genetically wired that way. And he's like, those are all excuses, Darren. He goes, you're an overachiever in business and finance, stuff like that you do. He goes, the thing is, he says, you should be able to do this. So then I got introduced to somebody else who was 100% legally blind, and he summited Mount Kilimanjaro with a guide, with a barbell, and Mount Everest base camp. And the guy told me, he said, yeah, I'm legally blind. I summited both these mountains. What's your excuse? So that was a turning point for me to realize, okay, I should train for this. So I trained a year for Mount Kilimanjaro to go up 19,340 feet in elevation, so about 5,895 meters. And it was a phenomenal, life-changing experience. So many life lessons I unpacked from that, so many takeaways from the mountain. And so now it's opened up a lot of doors and opportunities where I've got a guy now who I've known for 20 years. He's done 6 of the top 7 summits on the planet. So his only summit he's got left to do is Antarctica, Mount Vincent. So we're scheduled for January 2025. They only allow 100 climbers a calendar year to go up to Antarctica to do this mountain. And it's rated as the coldest place on planet Earth. Geographically, in Antarctica, it's near the South Pole. So we're going to do it in January, which is 24 hours of daylight, but prepare now for 15 months, about 15, 16 months of training development in various different scenarios. So we do best case scenario, likely case scenario, worst case scenario to plan and prepare for that.
Training for all of these things.
Yes, you prepare for snow conditions, blizzard conditions, crevasses, all that stuff you train.
Wow.
So I'll be training in Whistler, British Columbia, Canada, and probably down in Colorado as well, sometime as well.
Did you ever think that you would do anything like this?
Never in my lifetime. I have over 7,000 written goals. This was not one of them.
7,000 written goals.
7,000 written goals.
When did you write down those goals?
I've been doing this for a couple decades now of writing goals. I started when I was about 18, 19 years old. Actually, no, I was even younger than that. I started writing goals down but only like 5 or 10 written goals. And then in my 20s and my 30s, I got more and more serious. And then when I started to achieve bigger goals, personally and professionally, then I became really committed. And then things started to really take off in my late 30s. In my 40s, I was on a lot of airplanes, traveling a lot. So when I'm on the airplane, I would just put my headphones on, put inspiring music on, and I'd be on an 8, 10, 12 hour, 16-hour flight, international flight, and I would just start brain dumping different goals and dreams, then looking through different magazines, watching different YouTube videos, different documentaries, talking to different people, having conversations, and getting different ideas. So even like with hiking now, I belong to different hiking groups throughout North America and also internationally. So people post online all these different hiking trails, and I go to all trails, I check it out, add it to my goal list. Different travel goals, humanitarian goals, philanthropy goals, financial goals, health goals, relationship goals, business goals, acquiring companies, more real estate, businesses. And then I have a list of secret goals that no one will know until I die.
Really?
That I will do around the world, of secret goals that I will serve people and contribute to people's lives and do things anonymously.
After you've passed, you've set it up.
Set it up, and I have things I do throughout the world that I just do. Nobody knows, not even Tatiana, my partner.
Wow.
I just do it privately. It's within my heart. And then upon my death, if people take the time to read through all my list of goals that I've checked off and achieved, they'll see my
serve
list of
humanity
private
one
goals.
last time.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. You seem to have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
It's because I'm 47, and I probably have half the amount of energy that you do, or at least it feels like it, because, entrepreneurs oftentimes pursue many different pathways at once.
Sure.
And there's a mental energy burn that can take a toll on the physical body as well. Do you ever get ambition fatigue?
I do if I'm doing things that are not to my highest hierarchy of values or directly in line with my mission or vision. So I do things that if they're a shiny object or a distraction, I get depleted of energy. If I'm doing low priority activities, so for example, if you had me cook, like some people like cooking, I don't.
Okay.
I'd rather make reservations or hire a chef or have food delivered.
Okay.
House cleaning, things like that. If I'm doing those types of things, I drain my energy. So I'm always working with things that are in my hierarchy of values, of what's most important in my life.
So that was one of my questions for you, is how do you filter the decisions that you make or the opportunities that you take on?
Team of people around me. I have people around me. So Tatiana, I have a couple other females around me, women, that do this. So they filter things, that go through things. So that's a big thing. Because I qualify my time, protect my time is a big thing. So there's that, because I get bombarded with, you saw all the messages that come through my social media channels and emails on a daily basis of being pitched for things. It's unbelievable.
How many is it, do you think?
Sometimes it could be a couple hundred in a week.
Wow.
Yeah, and I know some people that are in a lot more, but yeah, between all the platforms, a few hundred times a week.
Do you have an admin that filters through them?
I have a chief operations officer that goes through stuff, and I do have an admin person as well. And then there's certain people with kind of like the inner circle that have been vetted and pre-qualified, that when things come to them, I know that they've been vetted, there's been due diligence on it, or at least discovery. So then I take it more seriously. It's kind of more of a higher priority to take that person. Okay. Right? But I get approached all the time for people want me to write them a check and solve their financial problems. I get that daily.
How do you handle that?
I got two yesterday. I got a guy yesterday blew his motor in his vehicle and wanted me to know if I'd pay for his engine.
How did he find you?
Through LinkedIn.
He just
sent me a private message through LinkedIn.
Thought you had money and might want to help.
I don't even know who he is. Wouldn't know him if he walked right by here right now.
Wow.
I have no idea. Another guy wanted to know if I'd pay for his daughter to put her through university.
Wow. When did that start happening to you?
So I'm 51 now, so it would have started probably around 40. The first time I went to NASDAQ to ring the closing bell, 2018.
For
when
EXP.
it really ramped up. Yeah, with EXP. I got a multiple mailing lists, and I think my information got out there publicly on the internet.
Okay.
Because when you're a publicly traded company, you're on a board of directors, a lot of these financial people across North America that are in the financial services industry, they want you as a client because you're like a whale client to them. And they want to leverage you, and they also want to sell you products and services. Mm-hmm. So you get on these databases, and then they just start calling you and trying to get to you all the time and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so there's ways to pre-qualify those people as well.
That's fascinating. And so I want to just take a little time and let the audience in a little bit and let them know that you are on the board of directors at eXp Realty, one of the most revolutionary, I think, and disruptive real estate companies, following a pathway of other disruptors, you know. And I moved my team, my brokerage, over to eXp about 18 months ago. And I vetted the company out. My leadership team, we tried to break it. We took 8 months and we tried to break it.
I love it.
And we couldn't.
Yeah.
And there was still a lot of interesting transitions moving over, as we were a fiercely independent brokerage. So for me, it was very difficult to come under the submission of new leadership, because that's one of the issues in my life that I've always had. I've had a lack of, aside from my dad and my grandfather and strong men in my life who loved me passionately and cared deeply for me, I've had a lack of great mentors. And so I've been forced in my life to learn everything myself as I go. And I'm the kind of guy that would look at Mount Kilimanjaro and say, I'm going to do that. I wouldn't wait for somebody to say, you should do this. And so I'm fascinated by your approach. And I want to dig into a couple other stories that you talked about. And so it was, in a way, Darren, it was difficult for me to come under this submission of leadership, because biblically, I believe that's what we're supposed to do. In order to be exalted, we must submit to authority. Whether that's your dad or a spiritual authority or a boss or leadership in an organization. I have found that God has unlocked the greatest opportunities for me when I come under submission.
For sure.
And I wanted, EXPCon last year was the first time I got to hear Glenn speak.
Oh, wow.
And I was relieved. To see such
humble
a humble man,
integral man, heart-centered man, deeply cares about people.
Correct. And then meeting you at BA and spending a little time with you, it made me feel alive again. That it restored my belief that people with means aren't out to get you, or they actually. Darren, it's very hard to find someone, in my experience, with means that actually cares.
And high levels of integrity.
Yes, and that's why I've had a really difficult time submitting to mentors, because here's an example. Let me tell you an example of one. I have had the opportunity to connect with some very high level private equity firms, and a gentleman that I know, we were in New York together, and this person I know, I think is, I think a lot of him, very smart, one of the smartest people that I've ever met in my entire life in terms of real estate and commercial real estate. And he's still one of those people that I can call. And I had decided, he's got a great background too. I had decided that that's the guy that I want to be like, or a version of that guy. I'm always going to be myself. But and then we got back from dinner one night, and an interesting thing happened to me. I've never seen a prostitute in my entire life. And so we went to New York, and this woman, kind of flashed her coat open as we were going by, and it caught my eye, and I was like, and I asked my friend, I was like, is that a prostitute? And he's like, yeah. And so I'm fascinated by people. So I watch.
Everybody's got a story.
I watch people, and so I watched that prostitute just kind of from the balcony, and a few minutes went by, and this gentleman who I thought very highly of, and still do, I watched him go over to the prostitute, lean in, have a conversation, and then they both together left for the elevator. And I felt defeated. Absolutely defeated. And what that does for me is I'm unable to learn from that person anymore. And so it was so refreshing.
The trust was broken.
It was. It's. I mean, I still trust him. But I don't trust him with my future. I trust him with information. I trust that he's an expert in a category, but I don't trust him with my future, which means my family's future and my legacy. And so it was an honor to meet you, because your accomplishments, I've begun to recognize a pattern in your accomplishment and in your achievement. And EXP is interesting because you were one of the original three who started the company, and you're so humble about it, and it's unlocked a lot of doors for you. And so tell me a little bit about what it was like in the beginning. So EXP is an unknown company. It's you, Glenn, and Jason Guessing.
So I came in 2013. There was a couple hundred people in total in the whole company. Came on as the first independent board of directors member. So there's Glenn Sanford, the founder, Jason Guessing, and myself. So I was the first independent director. And so the three of us would meet every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific time for a stand-up meeting.
What kind of things were you talking about in those
meetings? We were looking at things from a compliance standpoint. So compliance is a big thing. Risk mitigation, asset protection.
Especially since, so talk about compliance. I was introduced to EXP 10 years ago by someone in my market who didn't know how to pitch it.
Yeah.
And it's a very intelligent company, and it's not easy to get people to take the time to understand it.
For sure.
So I thought, I cared about my agents so deeply, and I thought there's no way that this one broker in the state of Missouri is going to take care of my agents the way I would. And I had 50 agents. And
they're like family to you, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I grilled Chris Cribb, who's our Missouri broker, and the man is phenomenal. He's got a great leadership team, and since coming over in the last 18 months, I haven't had a single agent complain about that. But that was a limiting belief for me.
Sure.
There's absolutely no way this is going to work. So did you have those kinds of conversations?
Yeah,
how to overcome those?
Yeah, in the early days, we had a lot of critics and skeptics and naysayers, and I had people that I've known for many years because I spent 25 years traveling the world as a corporate trainer as well, and I used to travel almost 300 days a year globally. And so I had a lot of people in the real estate industry that ran mega teams, large franchises, had a lot of financial investments involved, and they would come and actually do like interventions with me. They were concerned for me going down a path with a startup company, an unproven model with no financial backing, and building airplanes or flying it. And they were concerned for me, so they wanted to come in and say, Darren, listen, you have to realize something. I've been doing this for many years, a lot longer than you. You don't know what's going on here.
They were worried about your reputation.
Absolute reputation, being around the wrong environment of people and stuff. But it was interesting because when I was going through my discovery and due diligence as well for EXP to serve on the board and being asked for that, I went to 73 different people. I made a list in my journal. And all 73 people across North America said, do not get involved in this company.
So why would you do it if all those people?
Because the family that introduced me to Glenn was an ultra high net worth family, and they were writing a check, and so I was following the money because they had financial skin in the game. Nobody else was writing a check.
Okay.
And I've been involved in rooms before where people think, it's a great idea, and I'm thinking, okay, but then I start to watch people, and I'm thinking, okay, of all the people I talked to, the family that I dealt with was one of the most successful families in North America. More successful than some of the other people I was talking to.
Why did they decide to do it?
They'd known Glenn for many years, and they had financially invested with Glenn before in previous ventures back in the 1990s.
Okay, so there's a trust factor there.
History and experience, trust factor. They get to know each other, like each other, and trust each other. They introduced me to Glenn in 2013. And it was interesting because in 2011, I was flying from San Francisco to New York on United Airlines, and I wrote down in my journal, as part of my 7,000 goals, that I wanted to get onto paid advisory boards and paid boards of directors of public and private companies. And I had all these people, all these naysayers saying, Darren, listen, you barely passed public high school, you don't have an MBA, you don't have a PhD, it's just not gonna happen. You're not gonna get onto paid advisory boards and paid boards of directors. And today I serve on multiple paid advisory boards and boards of directors of companies.
Wow. So here's what I don't understand. You're already a successful person, and you made the decision to pursue growing EXP Realty.
Yeah.
Shouldn't your track record of success be enough for your friends to say, okay, Darren's making a good decision here? Like, why did they care so much to try to stop you from doing something?
Because I was very successful, just like yourself, being in your brokerage and your market center. Why switch and come to EXP? You're already established as a brand. You're already a reputation in the community. Yeah. I was already known in my industry of corporate training, traveling the world, training the largest companies in the world, working with some of the most successful, influential people in the world. And they were concerned that this is a shiny object as a startup residential real estate company, whereas I was already working with RE/MAX and Coldwell Banker and Cent 21 and Rolla Page and all these other companies. They figured, why would I go to this startup unknown company that has no money, that's building the airplanes they're flying at?
When we did come over to EXP, half of my team didn't come with me. And I had this moment, this leadership moment, and because my values had changed.
Yeah.
Because I had been praying for an opportunity. As a matter of fact, God spoke to me very directly, and he asked me if I would be willing to be an apostle for him to people in the business world.
Yeah.
And I was in my hot tub, very stressed. We had done 256 million in
Wow.
2022, over 900 transactions. I had to make my wife disband her team.
Wow.
So that she could come in and help me broker that. And I have a theater degree, Darren. I don't know how to do any of this. I figured all of this out as I went. I just solved the problems for the agents. The agents became my calling card. I would do anything for them, fought fiercely for them. And so it was really difficult when I felt like they didn't believe in me to take this to the next level.
Yeah.
But I understand it differently now. And that I read a book by a man named Sam Chand. He's a great leader, especially to pastors. and other business people, and his book is called Leadership Pain.
Oh, wow.
And I highly recommend the book. He also wrote a book called Leaders Create Chaos.
Oh, wow.
Which is another good
Sure.
one, and Why They Should. So, but Sam Chan's book nourished me during this time because I went into a deep depression, which is a difficult time to go into a deep depression.
Yeah.
Just as I'm trying to grow my career, and as the Almighty God has asked me to do something for Him.
Yeah.
But you find this in Old Testament stories often.
For sure.
And so it was difficult for me because people who I helped raise them up in life, I felt like had a different opinion of me, and I felt like what you said is they perceived that I had a shiny object syndrome, when really my goal increased.
Sure.
It multiplied in my own mind, and I knew that I had to become a different man, and I knew that I needed the operating systems for accounting and brokering that EXP could provide, so I could sow into the lives of the 5,000 people I haven't met yet, not the 50 people that were right in front of me.
Yeah.
And it was difficult, but Sam Chan's book said, look, leadership equals growth, and growth equals change, and change equals pain. So leadership equals pain.
Yeah.
And once, it was a rite of passage for me as a leader, and it took me a while to fully understand it, but when I was waiting to hear from God to make the decision to join EXP or not, because all of these people had their lives riding on my decision, and the leadership team. And it was one of those moments, like when you ask your dad for something, well, if your kids ask you for something and they ask you for a bike, you're like, Dad, can I have a bike? You love your kid. You want your kid to have things. So you're like, absolutely. I would love for you to have a bike. But then your kid comes back to you the next day and say, Dad, where's my bike? How would that make you feel?
Yeah, absolutely.
But if the kid's like, hey, Dad, you remember when you said yesterday that you would give me that bike? Thank you. And I just really, whenever you're ready to get me that bike, I just want to thank you because I know you love me, and I'm ready for that bike whenever you're ready and willing for me to have that.
Yeah.
And so that's my relationship with God. That's how I treat that relationship, because it's like I have kids. I love being a dad, and I understand the mind of God being a dad. But this was a moment where I was like, I need an answer right now. I need this, and I was praying, and I was like, Lord, I need to hear from you now, and I didn't. And I stepped out of my hot tub. I took 3 steps. I had just taken 2 days to decompress, and it was like 11 o'clock in the morning, and I took 3 steps, and my knees buckled, and I hit the ground.
Wow.
And I had to caught myself on like the beam that holds the stairs up. And I don't. The best way to describe it is that I went into almost like a trance state.
Sure.
And I heard very clearly in my spirit, and I started tears flowing for no reason. And I felt all the pain and stress that I had felt for the previous year, and the weight of all the decisions that I would have to make, and all of the pain that I knew that I would have to go through on a new journey. And I felt God asking me, you know, this feeling that you feel right now, there's other people, there's other business people in the world that feel just like that.
Absolutely.
Will you go to them, and will you tell them that I love them and to not give up?
Yeah.
And I made a decision to say yes, and that's the decision that I made to join EXP.
Wow.
And so here we are now.
Wow.
And so the leadership is important to me, and you know, my relationship with you is important to me because it's part of that. And I feel like I'm now able to connect with people all over the world. My network has grown, severely, and I'm able to, in a really cool relational way, ask people how they're doing, and build relationships, which I didn't realize until really this year how much I love to do it.
Yeah.
I thought I was just an introvert.
Yeah.
And you seem to love to network and to build relationships.
Yeah, I love people. I love people, and I think the thing is that, you know, I can look into people's eyes and I can see pain or trauma, and I can see if they're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough, they don't matter, they're invisible. Because I felt all those things growing up, right? So I can look into somebody's eyes and I can dial right into someone.
You recognize it.
I recognize it, yeah. I'm somebody who, I've never done drugs before in my life, so I don't recognize people with, if people say they've been in AA or Narcotics Anonymous, I don't relate to that because I've never had any, I've never abused drugs or alcohol at that time in my life. My outlet was always, when I was under stress, I'd always just go knock on doors when I was a kid and solve people's solve people's problems, right? Cutting their grass, shoveling their snow, delivering newspapers, raking leaves, painting fences, doing things like that. Always being in service, because I always realized that growing up that we don't have money problems in life, we only have thinking problems in life. There's no lack of money. Just go solve a problem and serve people. And as human beings, all we are is a network of conversations, right? So everything you want in your life is going to come from conversations. Like people always say to me, oh my gosh, you have 7,000 written goals. How do you expect to ever accomplish that in your lifetime? And I said, I don't have to accomplish it by myself, because most of my goals and dreams don't require my actions. It don't require my actions. It's all about creating teams and teamwork. And now with artificial intelligence and virtual assistants, I can have things happening all the time, achieving these goals and dreams.
Well, right? I love that. And your origin story is very interesting.
Yeah.
You were a melon salesman.
Sold watermelon, yep. Side of the road.
So you know, I am the great-grandson of a watermelon salesman, Southeast Missouri watermelon.
I picked thousands and thousands of watermelon and cantaloupe. In fact, to this day, I don't eat cantaloupe anymore because I ate so many of them growing up. When I was homeless, financially broke on the street, right? And I got a job picking watermelon and cantaloupe, but I still eat watermelon. But yeah, I learned a lot doing that.
What did you learn?
Well, the thing is that the farmer I worked with was a very integral man, right? And he did everything by his reputation. He was known by his melons. He was very passionate. He talked to his melons all the time out in the field. But he knew everybody. He was very good at a network of conversations at the farmers markets and meeting other farmers and bartering and trading and stuff. So I really learned the power of the relationships, of how they take care of each other in community, which is really, really important. Because no matter if you have a great crop that year or you don't have a good crop, they still take care of each other. That was very important. The importance of your word, the handshake. Because I saw many handshake deals on the farm while I was working over there, that somebody come by and needs to borrow the tractor or needs to borrow something, and it was all done by a handshake. And the importance of the integrity of that, right? That your word is your bond. Your word creates your world. And that's very important to me with that, right?
What's interesting about you being a melon farmer is in your book, you talk about this gentleman, this wealthy gentleman,
yes,
coming to you
yep,
and saying, hey, get in my car and let's go take a look at stuff,
yep,
and casting a vision for you,
yeah,
of this vacant lot, and asking you what you see in this,
yeah,
in this vacant lot, and you not being able to see it.
Yeah.
And then he kind of said, Darren.
I saw a chain link fence with an open, just an empty lot, real estate lot.
But he saw a real estate development.
Absolutely. And then he saw how he could generate, 4 or 5 story commercial real estate building, generate the cash flow from that building, borrow money from investors to build that building, and then create positive cash flow that actually created another home for him. So every time he built assets, he could actually build another real estate property.
Did he buy watermelons from you?
He did. That's why I met him on the side of the road.
And he must have just liked you.
Well, what happened was I was on welfare. I was working for cash at the watermelon farm on the side of the highway, and he came by in a Lincoln Town car, and it was the first time I'd ever seen a $1,000 Canadian dollar bill at the time. They don't have them anymore, but it was he had 5 $1,000 bills. I'd never seen that before in my entire life, only on television. And this guy had a billfold of 5 crisp $1,000 bills. And I was intrigued by that. Like, how does somebody do that? Right? Because here I am, I'm down on my luck. I'm flat broke financially, just trying to figure out where my next dollar is going to come from.
Did you not have ambition at that time?
I did. I had ambitions, but I was also scared, really scared. I had a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, a lot of negative self-talk, and a lot of criticism around me in my environment. That was never going to amount to much, never do anything much in my life. And I was playing the role of the victim. Why me? Why does this have to happen to me? Right? So I was playing the blame game. And he came by, bought a whole bunch of watermelon. And most people come by and buy less than $10 worth of watermelon on the side of a highway. He came back, it was 3 or 4 days in a row to buy watermelon. He was buying like $50, $100 quantities of watermelon. So I thought, this is really strange. It's a different pattern. Nobody does this. He must be going down the road and reselling the watermelon, because we were known with a great reputation that we had, best-in-class watermelon.
Okay.
So on the final day, I asked him, I said, sir, would it be okay if we get together sometime? I'd like to learn more about you. And so I set up a time with him to meet him at a coffee shop. I didn't have a vehicle because my car got repossessed. So I actually borrowed a vehicle for a friend of mine and actually borrowed $20. I didn't have any money. Okay. And I was getting paid every Friday from the farmer. So I borrowed $20 from a friend of mine. I also borrowed his car, and I went and drove out to this guy Harry's house. He lived out in the country. Got to this big, huge log house out in the country. And I thought, wow, how do people live this way?
Yeah.
Like, this is a massive sized log house, probably 10,000 square feet, right? Ring the door buzzer, and this lady comes and she goes, hi, you're here to see Harry? Yes, come on in. She goes, can I make you something to eat? And I thought it was either his wife or his daughter. And so I said, no, that's fine. Even though I was hungry, I want to be professional and not ask for anything, right? And she's like, can I make you something to eat? No, I'm fine. Even though I was hungry. And she asked me 3 or 4 times, can I make you something to eat? I said, no, that's fine. So then Harry comes downstairs. He goes, did my girl make you something to eat? And I said, no. And he goes, well, listen. And I said, Harry, is this your daughter or wife? He goes, no, it's my personal chef. I said, how does somebody have a personal chef? Like, how does that work? That's something I see on television. I've never met somebody with a personal chef. And that was very powerful to see that. And so that was like, wow. And so Harry then said, hey, listen, will you stick around tonight? I've got a team of people coming over, and I'm going to have a meeting. And Harry lived off his money's interest. He's extremely financially wealthy. And what happened was he set up a flip chart in his room, and he was buying a whole bunch of land, and he was going to subdivide it into a whole big development. And he was using other people's money, and he had a banker, he had a lawyer, he had an insurance person, he had all these different people that were all around him as his advisory council to help facilitate the project.
He let you in to just
He let me into the meeting, way over my head. I didn't understand anything they were talking about that night. And at the end, I said to Harry said to me, he said, well, my friend, what did you think of this? I said, oh, it was really cool, but I don't understand any of this kind of stuff. And Harry said to me, he said, you don't have to. He said, it's not about the how, it's about the who. It's not about the how. You don't have to know how to do all this stuff. You just have to know the who's on your team who can help you facilitate to do all this.
Did you decide to go meet with him before or after he showed you this vacant lot?
This is my first meeting with him outside of selling the watermelon on the side of the road. Okay. And then we built a relationship over a few months.
He took you there.
And then the one day he said to me, would you be willing to come with me? So I went with him in his Lincoln Town Car, and he had a phone inside of his vehicle, the big brick phone with the antenna. Yeah. And it was like $3 a minute. It was really expensive. Yeah. He had one, and I'd never met anybody who had a phone inside of their car. Wow. That was like something like Star Trek out of a movie.
Why do you think he said yes to you?
I think the thing is that my ambition, my determination, my perseverance, and I was just I was a sponge and curious to learn. Okay. And I think I reminded him a lot when he was younger. Okay. The ambition, the energy, the enthusiasm to want to make a difference and change. Okay. And I learned now from being around a lot of very influential, wealthy people that a lot of people get around people who are much older than them for their energy and their history and experience and their wisdom. And you get around people who are younger than you for their creativity, imagination, and their energy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Fast forwarding in your career a little bit, you were a telemarketer.
Yep, I was a telemarketer, yep.
And you were one of the best telemarketers in the company.
In all of Canada, yeah.
In all of Canada.
Yeah, I used to make 400 cold calls a day, 2,000 cold calls a week, had a 98% rejection rate.
Most people wouldn't be able to handle that kind of rejection.
No, it was a vicious cycle of a turnstile. People would come in and they would last, some people would last 2 hours on a shift and they'd be off the floor.
It's an unfair advantage in sales to have that switch that you can turn off. Yeah. How did you turn it off and not fear rejection?
I talk to a mirror, so I got trained to always speak to a mirror and imagine there's a person in front of you, you're talking to them. Okay. But the first few weeks was brutal, right? But I needed the paycheck. And then after a while you develop thick skin. I developed thick skin, and I just developed where a point was when somebody would reject me, it was kind of like fishing. You hook the fish and you just got to fight with it and play with it for a while. Yeah. So it just became like fishing.
You reframed it into something
Absolutely.
Fun.
Yeah. And then the role playing, did a lot of role playing. Everything was scripted. We read scripts in the telemarketing firm. I was selling magazines. So I was selling magazines across Canada between 5 and 9 p.m. Monday to Friday. And I was made. So then after 7 months, my boss came to me and said, listen, you can't go any further here. I suggest you leave. And I'm like, well, I need the paycheck.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah. Like I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was your boss. It was like, you should quit. You should move on. Yeah. Like, why would a guy tell his best salesman to go kick
Because he knew it was a dead end for me, and he saw more potential in me than I saw in myself. Okay. He also believed more in me than I believed in myself. His name was Glenn. And he just saw more potential in me. And then when I left, my last day, I went to these telephone marts, or telephone stores, to actually get telephone books. And then I bought a Meridian telephone, and we would pre-program the last 2 numbers. So, if your number was 773, I'm just making up numbers, 300-01234, you would dial the last 2 numbers. And so I started to make 400 cold calls a day from alphabet A all the way to Z through the telephone books, calling businesses to see if I could sell them corporate training services to come in and train their staff on how to grow and build the company.
So that's what you did after you left being an employee of that job.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you had some savings saved up.
Nah, not much, and I did side jobs a lot of times, just side hustles, just to help pay the bills.
So you became a business owner at that point. You're like, I'm going to do corporate training because I know how to sell.
Yeah, and it was 1995 to the year 2000, made over 100,000 cold calls over that 5-year period.
Wow.
And some months I was 2, 3, 4 months, sometimes even 5 months of a stretch behind on my bills, calling the telephone company, calling my bill collector people to renegotiate. Like, listen, I'm going to get this turned around. Just believe in me. I'm making all these phone calls. I can prove it. I'm in the game. I'm hustling. I'm grinding. I'm not sitting on the couch watching TV. Like, I'm in the game, and I'm getting rejected.
Yeah.
And some of that, and just showed that I was creating activity. I was taking action lots.
Yeah, and you weren't known.
Nobody knew me.
So you're having to sell somebody on bringing you in. You're having to sell your track record, what you've done, and get them to pay you to coach their team.
Yeah, first company who's ever paid me was Investors Group Financial Services. Second company was Cent 21 Real Estate.
Wow.
Those were the first 2 companies that ever paid me.
Really?
Yeah, first payment I got was $50 as a keynote speaker. They gave me $50.
And what did you do? Just speak for an hour?
I was speaking for 45 minutes to a group of financial advisors, financial planners.
How'd that go?
It was phenomenal because I was speaking on overcoming adversities and failures and challenges, which I was rejected a lot. So I had a lot of practical experience in doing that.
Okay.
And these are financial planners, financial advisors going out and networking and prospecting to get clients to sell financial services products to.
Interesting.
And and then that led into other opportunities. And then I got a big break a few years later. I met a gentleman who actually introduced me to somebody at Stanford University. And they had a summer program called Supercamp, supercamp.com. And so I got invited to come down and be a facilitator and a team leader there. And I went down there and I worked with a lot of very affluent kids from all over the world at this program at Stanford University. And so I got a chance to meet the students and the parents, and that opened some doors up for me as well. Then I got invited from Stanford to actually go to the country of Singapore and work with Supercamp over in Singapore.
Wow.
And met some very influential people over there. But I was a person who was always knocking on doors, always making phone calls, always talking to people. And people used to always say, oh my gosh, you talk to everybody. Well, I always believed as a young kid that we're just a network of conversations. Mm-hmm. And the more conversations you have, the more opportunities live inside of conversations.
It seems to have worked out well because you became like one of the top corporate trainers in the world.
In the world.
You were traveling 300 days out of the
year.
Almost,
276 days a year, about 300,000 miles a year, trained 157 of the Fortune 500 companies.
Did you have a spouse, partner?
No, I didn't have. I was single most of the time because I was on the road 276 days a year.
Hard to have relationships.
Hard for stability and structure with that. And then 3 weeks a month, I was somewhere in the world, and I had so many mileage from hotels and rental cars and airlines. I would pick people up. It's like, hey, listen, you want to go someplace in the world? And I had so many miles that you just come with me, and everything was taken care of. I sometimes paid the taxes. It was very minimal, but I could fly anywhere in the world. So I traveled all over the world, doing 50 countries.
You have so many great stories about getting to the next level and like overcoming objections. And one of my favorite stories about you that you told me when we were in Sarasota one time is the understanding that you could charge more for your services.
Sure.
And it was the guy that told you to like reach down and grab your balls and double your rate when you were on the phone.
Yeah, so
Tell that story. That's a great
so I was
one.
in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I was at the Crown Plaza Hotel. I was speaking to a group of people in the oil and gas sector, oil and gas industry for Western Canada. I was one of the guest speakers. Guy noticed me there. He was an executive in a large oil company in North America here, very well-known company. And he saw me as a guest speaker. He was one of these guys that just he doesn't sit still to listen to somebody. Like he just doesn't have the attention span. And he found himself when I was there, he got sent there by his employer. As an executive, he led a whole team of people. So he was there as the leader, and he found himself bored at these workshops and seminars all the time. But he said when I was speaking, he was leaning forward, taking notes and asking people for a pen. And it was just out of character for him. And he's like, man, if this guy can have such an impact on me, to have me taking notes when I'm a guy who doesn't pay attention to this kind of stuff and actually write things down, then what can he do for my team? Because he got bonused off of it based on production. So he got salary plus bonus. So it was interesting. So what happened was I was in a place called Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, and I was flat broke financially, up and down all the time. And a friend of mine called me up and he said, hey, I want to bring you to this mastermind program. So I said, I don't know, what are we going to do? And he goes, just come as a guest. So I come as a guest. I go in there. There's all these successful people, kind of like a board of advisors like BA. Mm-hmm. And I'm the brokest guy in the group. And I don't have the confidence, right? Because I'm putting these people on a pedestal and put myself in the pit, right? And I'm thinking I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough. So I'm in this room, and they have a thing towards the last probably half hour to an hour of this mastermind called the hot seat. And they invite one of the members of the group to come up, and you sit in the hot seat, and they inspect you. They inspect how your relationship's going, your health, your finances, your job, career, business, and they just pull apart what you're doing and find ways to contribute and level over you and serve you. And it's uncomfortable, but it's because we all have blind spots.
Right.
So I'm in the room as a guest, and the guy said, well, let's have Darren Jacklin go up there. I'm I'm just a guest. I'm not paying to be here.
Yeah.
I'm just a fly on the wall. And I'm like, no, that's fine. And the guy's like, no, you go up in the hot seat. I said, no, that's fine, because here I am. How am I going to contribute to this group? Right? Like, these guys are so far down the path further ahead of me than me. I'm just here to watch. I'm learning lots, but I'm not going to participate. And the guy's like, no, go up. So anyways, I get in this argument with this guy. Then there's 3 or 4 people arguing with me to go to the front of the room. And the one guy stands up in front of the group. He says, listen, are you going to keep arguing for your limitations, or are you going to go to the front of the room?
Wow.
And he goes, I'm not going to fight you for your limitations.
Yeah.
Right? Get to the front of the room. So I go to the front of the room, and they just start inspecting me. And the guy goes, let me ask you a question. What do you do? I said, I'm a corporate trainer. He goes, how much do you make a day? I said, I get paid $200 a day plus my travel expenses. How long do you want to live that way for? I'm like, well, I'd like to get to $500 a day, right? Because sometimes it takes a day to fly to New York, and then I do a full day of training. It's $200, and I fly back. So it's actually 3 days to make $200. I can make more money as a greeter at Walmart some days, but I love doing this. So they start picking me apart and inspecting me, and the guy goes, listen. He goes, next month when we come back here, I want you to come back here. He says, I'm going to give you a challenge. You want a challenge? You seem like an overachiever. And I'm like, okay. He goes, I want you to start charging $10,000 a day for your corporate training services. I'm thinking, no, that ain't going to work.
From 200
because I'm getting
to
rejected.
10,000.
I'm getting rejected at $200 a day.
Wow.
I'm not. Listen, I have a high rejection rate at $200 a day. If I have to $10,000, I'm going to be completely rejected. I'm going to be sitting on somebody's couch. It ain't going to work. That's not possible. So this guy's just telling me, you need to charge $10,000 a day. I said, listen, that's not going to work. You have to understand. He goes, you don't know what you're talking about. I said, listen, I do know what I'm talking about, because I'm making the phone calls every day. I'm making 400 cold calls a day, 2,000 cold calls a week. I'm dialing for dollars.
You got the data.
Yeah. I said, I know from experience, because I'm the one making the phone calls.
Yeah.
So I get in this argument with these guys, and it's quite entertaining to some people, but I'm very passionate about, I know my industry. So the guy says, do you accept my challenge? I said, fine, I'll accept your challenge, but I tell you right now it's not going to work. I'm going to prove you it's not going to work. He's okay, we'll see. So this is on a Tuesday. 2 days later, I get a telephone call from this executive that I met 18 months prior at the oil and gas conference in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. He calls me up, he goes, can I speak to Darren Jacklin, please? I said, yes, Darren Jacklin. He goes, listen, I want to bring you in as a corporate trainer for an off-site, which means we go off-site. I want to meet in the Canadian Rockies at the Quantum Leaps Lodge near Golden, British Columbia, Canada. And he says, here's the date, it's like 4 months from now. And he goes, I want to bring you in. And so just to back up, while I'm in this mastermind program, they told me that if I'm on the phone, I'm dialing for dollars, I'm dialing for companies, and if I go to say $10,000, if I get uncomfortable, to reach down and grab my balls and squeeze my balls.
Just to give you a little pain.
Yeah, pain or pleasure, right? So I give my word. Integrity is important because my word creates the world. I give my word to do this. So then 2 days later, I get this phone call from this executive from this oil and gas company. He calls me.
You thought the guys were maybe...
I thought it was set up. I thought it was totally set up, right? I thought, okay, I know where this is going.
You're like, okay.
Right? These guys have phoned a couple buddies of theirs. They got me. They're calling me.
Yeah. And
this is a total setup to see if I follow through and be my word and be accountable and responsible for my word.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, okay. So then the guy goes, so how much for a day of corporate training on this offsite? And I pause. I thought, you got to be kidding me. So I reach down, for real. I start grabbing my balls, squeezing my balls. And I say, $10,000. He goes, done. He goes, I'll have my executive assistant call you back in a couple hours. We'll get you a FedEx tracking number. We'll send you 50% of the check. And when you train, we'll give you the other 50%, plus we'll pay for your travel expenses. So
you're in shock.
A couple hours later, I'm thinking, is this executive assistant really going to contact me? So she calls me, wants a mailing address for FedEx to send a check for $5,000. So what happened was I was behind on my bills. And that $5,000, I had to pay people that I'd borrowed money from over the last while that I was out of integrity with, because I had overpromised and underdelivered. So she calls me, she gets my address, she gives me a FedEx tracking number because they had prepaid envelopes, I guess, with the company. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I just can't wait to go to FedEx tonight and see the tracking thing online and see if it's really going to get delivered tomorrow, right? So I start calling these people up and say, listen, just want to let you know, I've got some money coming in, going to have it the next day or so. I'm going to pop by and deliver them, because I always felt if I owed money to top by and give it in person, right? Not send a check in the mail, but deliver it in person, look the person in the eye, apologize, be integral and sincerely, recommit to my promise, and then pay them. So what happened was I poured this money, called all these people. So the next day FedEx arrives. I run to the FedEx truck. I grab the check. I run to the bank, okay? So this is I'm living in Canada. So this is a United States check. No, pardon, this is a Canadian check. It was a Canadian check at the time, but it was out of province. So I go to the bank, I go see the teller, I give her the check, she deposits, she goes, is there anything else I can do for you? I said, yeah, I'd like to make a withdrawal. I have to withdraw the $5,000, I still got to pay taxes on it, so I'd like to put a little money aside for taxes in the tax account, but I got to take the money. She goes, well, Mr. Jacklin, she goes, we have a 5-day business hold on your check.
Oh, no.
I'm like, well, I need the money. Can I speak to the manager? Manager's like, listen, there's an out-of-province check. You've never cashed a check like this of $5,000. Because remember, I'm charging $200.
Right.
I've never cashed a check for $5,000 before.
Right.
So they said, nope, that's our policy, 5-day business hold. So I got to wait 7 days, right, because of the weekend. So I call these people up and said, listen, I've got to wait a whole week here before I pay you. So what happened was I ended up getting that all sorted out and straightened out. And then 4 months later, I arrive at the Quantum Leaps Lodge in Golden, British Columbia, Canada, in the Canadian Rockies. I go to this corporate training seminar, phenomenal event. There's about 12 participants there, very phenomenal. They do an evaluation for them. They score me very highly. And at the end, they go whitewater rafting down the Canadian Rockies. And this executive, he says to me, he says, you and I got to go for a walk. So this guy smokes about 1 to 2 packs of cigarettes a day. He's got his Players Light cigarettes there in his pouch. He's got a cigarette in his mouth, just one after another. He's smoking cigarettes.
You thought he might be mad.
Oh, yeah. I thought he was upset with me. Real redneck guy. And so we go for a walk down the riverbank, and he goes to me smoking a cigarette, and he's got my check for $5,000 behind his pack of cigarettes. And he says to me, I got a question to ask you. When I asked you 4 months ago, when I called you up and I asked you how much for a day at corporate training, why'd you tell me $10,000? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I hope he doesn't try to get a refund because I've already spent the money.
Yeah.
Like the $5,000 that I got as a deposit, that's already spent. And the other $5,000 that he's got in his check, that's already committed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To catch up on things, right? And I'm terrible. I'm like a duck. I'm nice and calm, prim, proper underneath. I'm paddling really fast, but I'm scared.
Yeah.
Right? And this guy looks like a violent guy if he gets upset, right? Real redneck guy. And
don't mess with the redneck.
Oh yeah, oil patch guy, oil patch worker, right?
Yeah.
You know. And so I said, listen to him. I said, listen, you know, I think I did a phenomenal job. You know, your team was very impressed. We got evaluation sheets. I scored highly on there. I looked at it briefly before I went up with you. And he goes, can I give you some feedback? I said, sure. He goes, listen, the next time somebody asks you how much for a day your corporate training services, you don't open up your mouth and you don't tell the price. I'm like, okay. Otherwise, you're going to negotiate with yourself. He goes, you need to ask, what are people willing to pay? He goes, you know, Darren, I had $25,000 budget set aside for you. I was going to pay you $25,000 for the day, plus first-class travel expenses to come here and train my team, because I know what you did to me in my life 18 months ago. And if you can make an impression like that to me on my life, what can you do with my staff, my executives? And he goes to me, he goes, so you have $15,000 on the table. He hands me a check and he goes, I hope you learn a lesson today on this. Let's go back to camp and have a campfire.
And handed you your $5,000.
Hand me a $5,000 check. And he believed more in me than I believed in myself that he was going to pay me $25,000 for a 6-hour corporate training seminar.
That's this pattern.
And 4 months earlier, I was getting paid $200 a day.
So did you change everything from that point
So
on?
yeah, so it's interesting. So I realized when I would charge $200, $500 a day, I'd deal like 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 people that would want to interview from a company.
Yeah.
When I started charging corporations $25,000 for a day, the most I've ever been paid is $40,000 for corporate training, for a day of corporate training. But the thing was is that I'd go in and I'd charge, and people say $40,000. Remember, if you're helping a company with an acquisition or a merger or something like that, and they're making hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, $40,000 is chicken feed. And people have to understand that the mindset that people are like, $40,000, why would a company pay $40,000 for a day? Because the return on investment of how are they monetizing my training development material? Because sometimes I'd introduce them to somebody through my network, and that one connection would be worth millions of dollars to them. Right? Buy their company, invest in their company, become an executive with their company or something, right? So it was just a return on, it was all based on math. All return on investment.
It was not just the training, it was the relationship with Darren.
Absolutely.
And that network.
Yeah.
That's what it was
and
worth.
that changed my life. And so I got more, so it's interesting. So a month later, I go back. No, sorry. I didn't go the next couple months to the mastermind, but later that fall, I went to the mastermind where the guys challenged me. And I went in and I actually went to Staples and I actually took pictures, photocopied of the checks to verify that I actually got paid $10,000.
Wow.
And then I shared the story to the mastermind group, which really inspired the people. And they're like, wow, we told this guy to ask for $10,000, and here's this guy in an oil and gas company telling him to charge $25,000.
Yeah.
And my mindset was how to get from $200 to $500. That was a stretch goal for me.
Yeah.
I never ever imagined in my lifetime ever being paid $25,000 in a day. Maybe in a few months or 6 months, but never in one day of corporate training.
So the watermelon farmer and these corporate trainers, the mastermind, your boss at the telemarketing company, your friend who encouraged you to summit Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
Everybody sees more in you than you see in yourself.
Yeah.
From experience, how would you advise somebody who might be struggling with that or doesn't even know that they're struggling with it?
Yeah. Key thing is your environment. Is that, you know, a lot of times, like I would spend time with people I respect and admire, not people I always had influence on. Mm-hmm. And so you want to get around people who you respect and admire, not people who always have influence. We become comfortable in our environments, right? So if people are living paycheck to paycheck, typically your environment, people around you are all paycheck to paycheck. Right. You know, I was overweight, so I was hanging out with people who were overweight, right? I was hanging around people who didn't exercise. I was part of my environment. Yeah. So as soon as I started to hike more, I started to be around other hikers. As soon as I started to do investing, real estate investing, I started getting around other people. So I started being on boards of directors, I started getting around other people who were on boards of directors. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the thing is, you know, birds of a feather flock together, as they say. So I started to realize that my environment is stronger than my willpower. So if somebody's struggling right now, the key thing is to get around other people who are more successful than you. Two things happen. Number one is a knowledge transfer. Number two is an energy transfer. Like, for example, as we're here right now, if Warren Buffett walked by here right now, and all he did is looked at you and nodded his head or said hello to you, would that have an impact on your life?
Yes.
How long would it stay with you for that impact?
Probably the rest of my life. I would tell many people about that story.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it would just energy. Yeah. So when you get around, one of the things about masterminding or being around, you know, like people always say, like, you know, like Rotary clubs or Chamber of Commerce or Women of Business or private mastermind groups or secret societies or whatever you want to call it. Different clubs, different groups, you know, country clubs, tennis clubs, private clubs you get along with. Why do people join those clubs? Because you might feel like you're failing in your marriage or your finances, your health, your business. But if you get around people who are succeeding, some of that will rub off on you. So successful people get together because energetically there's a transfer of energy and a transfer of knowledge. So that's the key thing. So the masses think everything's a scam. Successful people think there's an opportunity.
Wow.
So the thing is, most people are not successful, like in business life. They watch television, watch the media, or they go drinking or partying, stuff like that. They do things like that, which are low vibrational things. Mm-hmm. But if you'll find people that are, whether it's real estate, pick any industry, mm-hmm. the best, like one of the things that boggled my mind, I would be speaking at conference. I've trained over 1 million people. And I'd be a guest speaker at a real estate conference with 5,000 or 10,000 people in the audience. And the first 3 rows are your top income earners, your top achievers. The first 3 rows, right? And I'd watch people in the back who are struggling, and I think to myself, man, if I was in the back, I would want to find out what the person in the first 3 rows is doing, and if I could go for breakfast, lunch, or dinner with that person. I'll give you an example. If we took a group of 10 people, this person's a 10-air, 100-air, 1,000-air, 500,000-air, $500,000-aire, millionaire, multimillionaire, decamillionaire, centimillionaire, and then a billionaire. If you had a chance to take anybody out for lunch, who would you take out for lunch?
Billionaire.
Billionaire. You know, most people will not take a billionaire out for lunch.
Why not?
Because they're intimidated by him or her.
Yeah.
They will go to where kind of a water level based on their net worth. So if I'm making 60 grand a year, I'll get somebody around 60, 70, 80 grand a year.
I would challenge you, and I would say probably most billionaires wouldn't go out to lunch with people because they want to network with other billionaires.
For sure.
I mean, this happened to me at a Tony Robbins event.
Yeah.
I was at the point in my life where I put the $10,000 fee for all of Tony Robbins, you know, live events on a credit card, believing that I knew that I could pay it back with what I would learn. And like you were talking about, I showed up, low man on the totem pole, couldn't afford to be there, trying to learn the best I could to get to the next, you know, phase of my life. And there was people sniffing people with money to go network. Sure. Yeah. And I've never felt so rejected in my life from people that were like, ask me 2 or 3 questions. Nope. Do you have money? Can I network with you? Nope. Yeah. So how would you challenge me to say
so
that?
I have different circles of people that I'm around billionaires all the time on a frequent basis. Yeah. In fact, in the last 24 hours, I've been around 3 of them. Yeah. Being here in Las Vegas here at this conference. Yeah. And I hike with billionaires. I've been in fact, some of the people that if you were around me, mm-hmm. Like following me around, there's people around me that you would never even know they're high net worth or ultra high net worth or billionaire level. They just blend right in like everybody else. Because they don't want the visibility, they don't want the exposure.
Gotcha.
They're low profile but high impact.
So those people would go out to lunch with you?
They are, because to them they realize it's about paying it forward and passing on because they were wanting your seat.
Okay.
Because so the people I'm around are first or second generation, but they had to work for it.
Yes.
They didn't inherit the money.
Gotcha.
Right? They're not trust fund people. Right? I have some trust fund people in my network. They're a little bit different. Right? Some of them are entitled.
Yes.
And some of them are more high energy or more drama.
Right.
More problems,
right.
challenges go on in their life. But the thing is that all it is about making requests. So I always give people an assignment or an exercise. I always give them 2 questions. First of all, so if we look at life is that all we are is a network of conversations, and the more conversations we have with people, the more opportunities live inside of conversations, okay? Because all we are is a network of conversations. So what I encourage people to do is to make requests. Now there's just a request, there's a powerful request, there's an outrageous request, there's an unreasonable request, but you make a request. And for every request you don't make, or every question that you don't ask, the answer is always what? No. Okay? So when you make a request, only 3 steps, one of 3 steps will happen. Step number 1 is people will accept the request. Step number 2 is they'll decline the request. Or step number 3 is they'll do a counteroffer to the request. So they'll accept, decline, or counteroffer. Okay, so I share with people, just practice doing this through a network of conversations. Just practice making requests with people. And the more you do it, the more you develop like a muscle of a pattern of consistency of doing this, and you'll get better and better at it, and eventually it just becomes autopilot. You start making requests for everything. Hey, can I make a request? So the thing is, what I encourage you to do is question number 1 is, where am I not requesting in my life? So you actually write this down. Where am I not requesting in my life? And you take a look at your life like an audit. You actually audit your life. Where am I not requesting in my life? And you look at your life of where am I not requesting? And where you're not requesting is an area of your life that's not growth. So for example, you say, man, I want to make a lot more money. I want to change my zip code or my postal code. I want to travel more. I want to take more trips. I want to send my kids to private school. I want to put my kids in college, university. I want to have a nicer vehicle. I want to change my wardrobe, whatever it is. So if you start having more conversations, get around people who are financial people, investors, people who are good at managing or got their money right, your finances will change. Okay? So like if somebody's not a millionaire, I put them around with 4 millionaires and they hang around, you'll become, if you hang out with 4 broke people, you become the 5th.
Right. Now, I was raised to be a gentleman.
Yes.
And to value people's time.
Yes.
So a lot of times, if I don't have anything valuable to offer, I won't ask or make any requests.
Correct.
Because I'm just trying to be humble and
so here's
not
the thing
waste
with
so much
that.
time.
So we all think that we don't have anything to contribute. But it might be even just your presence, just you showing up. That is an exchange of energy, and there's a knowledge transfer and an energy transfer.
Yeah, I like that.
So you might have a skill. It could be barbecuing. It could be cooking. It could be just the way you.
I actually do have that skill.
Yeah.
I love it.
Could be just the way you connect with your son or your daughter or your wife that this billionaire or high net worth alternative person does not have in his or her life.
I get you.
Right? So there's something. Every person has something that contributes to another person's human being life. Because remember this: you guys are having a conversation. Not by accident.
Right.
I believe that everybody is by design. Everybody comes in your life on purpose, right?
I agree.
Like I can go to the other side of the world, and all of a sudden I meet somebody who knows somebody where I live. Like it's just a small world,
Truly,
right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's always on purpose. Nothing's ever in your way. It's only on your way.
I like that.
Right. And so you look at just through the exploration process of having a conversation, of talking to this person. Because a lot of times when you meet somebody who's really successful, you put them on a pedestal, you put yourself in the pit, and you think, well, who am I?
Right.
But realizing this person has fears, doubts, worries, insecurities. They're just like you and I, and they're no different. And they are really good in a certain area of their life. Could be finances, could be business, but they have another area that they're not so good in. Okay, I'll give you an example. Years ago, there was this very wealthy man. He sold this company to Cisco. Okay, he owned a company. It was a food supply company. He sold it for millions of dollars to this company. And I went to a Rotary Club meeting one time. This is many years ago, and I wanted to meet this guy. And I walk into this Rotary Club as a guest speaker. A friend of mine who's passed away now, he owned a whole bunch of restaurants. And Reg brought me to this Rotary Club, and this guy came in, he sat down. His name was Bill, and I wanted to meet this guy. He blew me off. Like there was like a 30-year age gap between my age and his age. And he wasn't there for me, didn't give me the time of day. And I was offended by it. And he's sitting there, and he's talking to my buddy Reg, Henry, who's passed away now as well. And he's like, Reg, he goes, I'm doing this party this weekend for all these vendors and all these food suppliers. They're all coming to my house. We got this conference, and we're gonna have a pool party and some of this. And he goes, the other day my groundsman guy was smoking marijuana, and I fired him. I don't want guys like that on my property. They're gonna be smoking marijuana. I fired the guy. I got nobody to cut my grass now. My wife wants me to cut the grass. I don't even own a lawnmower. Don't even know how to cut grass. Never cut grass in years, right? He goes, man, I wish somebody could just solve that problem for me and cut my grass. So I said to Reg, because this guy wouldn't give me the time of day, but Reg knew me very, very well. I said to Reg, I'll cut his grass. So Reg goes, I got somebody for you, Bill. And Bill, he said, good. Here, have him pop by my address. Be there by 9 o'clock on Saturday morning because the pool party started at 4 and all the crew are coming in at 1 to start setting up. So I go borrow somebody's lawnmower. I show up at his house. Now here's what I did. I actually brought my clothes for the night because I thought if I'm going to be in this room, I'm not leaving.
Right.
I'm not leaving. So when I got there to cut the grass, I cut the grass. I cleaned the swimming pool as well. I spent time building a relationship with his wife because he wouldn't give me the time of day.
Wow.
His wife got to know me and like me and trust me in a very short period of time. She's giving me lemonade. She made me a toasted tomato lettuce sandwich. And she goes, oh, by the way, she goes, are you staying for the party tonight? And I said, yeah. She goes, well, the change room's over here by the pool party. So I go and I change, right? Because it's like in business. If you're in the room, be in the deal. In the room, in the deal.
Right.
Built very wealthy man, told me that years ago. He said, if you're getting a seat at the table, make sure you're in the opportunity, no matter whatever it is. And that was a big thing for me. So I go to this party that night, and Bill comes up to me and he goes, you look familiar. And I'm like, yeah. I said, I met you recently at the Rotary Club. Oh, yeah. He says, well, how did you get here? I said, well, your wife, and I'm really good friends with Reg Henry. Oh, okay. And then he walks off. And then a while later, what happened was I was consistent, and he was a guy. So I realized several months later that he was testing me because he saw me as a young guy. He's like, okay, is this guy going to be focused? Is he going to be committed? Is he going to be disciplined? Or is he one of these guys that's just going to be all over the place? So he does this with people as his personality to test you to see if you're consistent. He's the type of guy who will come in and he'll say, listen, you know what? Let's say you're selling them advertising. He'll say, you know what, Jeremy? Man, you're ripping me off, man. And all he wants to see is, are you gonna back off? Push back?
Yeah.
He just wants to see what you're made of, your character.
Yeah.
He's one of these guys. And then once you get to know him, the guard comes off, and he's joking around with you. He's got a good sense of humor, and he's totally fine.
Interesting.
But those first few months, man, it was tough. I was scared being around this guy. So intimidating, and I thought he was aggressive and arrogant. And after I realized it was just an act, that he was trying to just test me to see what I was made of.
You just hung in there.
Yep.
Well, there's two more things I want to just touch on. I want to touch on your book, and I want to touch on the Profit, the new opportunity that you've got. But before I do, I just wanted to thank you for one of the conversations that we had in Sarasota, because although I do believe I have this mission, I've always been somebody who sows into people.
Yeah.
And I've always believed that you reap what you sow, and I've always put other people first, and I've always participated in business ventures where I believe I'm serving people.
Yes.
That's just always come naturally to me. But recently I had a block, like when it comes to money or financial gain, because I've had a few really great years.
Yeah.
And I've got more money than I've ever had in my entire life. And before, right during COVID, I paid off everything that I own, including my house, and which was a big deal for me, a huge deal for me. And I felt like I'm good.
Yeah.
Like I don't want anything.
You're comfortable.
I don't want anything else. But there's still things that I want to do, and that requires resources.
Yeah.
And so I got to a point where I didn't know how to want for more because I felt bad wanting more.
Yeah.
But in a conversation over dinner that we had in Sarasota, you introduced me to your quote that's also in your book, that your success is somebody else's miracle.
Absolutely.
And that changed me. Like, it totally changed me because it reframed the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And now I know I have to succeed, because if I don't, other people won't have the opportunities, because we hear from a lot of different people that money magnifies who you are.
Yeah.
I'm a very generous person.
Yeah.
I want to be generous. In times of financial stress, I get very upset. I get very tearful when I talk to my wife because I just want to give more. I just want to do more for people. And
you and I are very similar in that area.
Really?
I always want to make a difference. Absolutely, yeah.
There's transactional relationships in your life, and there's transformational.
I don't like seeing people struggle. It hurts me, it pains me to see people struggle.
It does.
Right, and I see some people in business when they're struggling. I know they're so close to a breakthrough, right?
It does.
But I don't like seeing people that are not having food in this world, or not knowing where the next meal is going to come from, right? Because I've been there.
I've got a limiting belief that there's no money in transformational relationships. I mean, Tony Robbins might tell me otherwise. Yeah. But there's a lot of transactional relationships before you get to the transformational ones. Yeah. But I just want to thank you for that quote and that reframing, and that it comes from. I think people should read your book. I think your Elevate to Educate foundation that you and Tatiana do is very beautiful. I love the way that if somebody wants to talk to you, work with you, they got to walk with you. and they've got to believe in what you believe in. And your story about going to Africa and seeing a young lady being sold for $1,
Yeah.
and that changed you and Tatiana.
Yeah.
And you're
Human trafficking,
you're
right?
doing things to stop human trafficking with your foundation. I think it's amazing. I think I want to do more to participate with that. And I think that's, you challenged me during that time to find something that I could live the rest of my life for.
Yeah, dedicate your life to a cause greater than yourself.
Yeah, and I think that will propel me and other people, and it's probably happened for you too,
Yeah.
to higher levels of success and
Yeah.
financial gain.
For sure.
Because
Yeah.
you have a good reason to do
And it's
it.
never about you. You're just the messenger of the message. You're the vehicle to facilitate it.
Yeah.
To dedicate your life to a cause greater than yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Like I remember one of my mentors who's in the book, Harry, the guy that with the Lincoln Town Car. I sat with him on a park bench one time, and I saw him open up an old leather briefcase and write out checks for up to $100,000 anonymously with a numbered company, using the city hall as a return mailing address on the envelopes with the stamp.
Just for
and we sent out $100,000 in checks that day with a numbered company that was non-traceable.
Wow.
That he'd structured and set up, just giving anonymously to people. And I made a promise on that day not to ever say where those checks got distributed.
Wow.
Throughout the community. And he said to me, he said, I want you to someday be in a position to be able to do this.
That's cool.
Right? I saw him write a check one time for $1 million to a charity of his choice.
Wow.
He says, one thing to make $1 million. He said, now make it and give it away. That's a whole other level.
I bet.
He feels, I made $1 million. Yeah. Give $1 million away to a cause of your choice.
Yeah. Beautiful. So how can people get a copy of your book?
Yeah, so this is the Until I Become. They can go to either Amazon. They have an Amazon account, amazon.com or .ca, or you can go to untilibecome.com, or just Google the website or just Google the name of the book, and it will come up on various different book stores all over the world.
It's very practical, very easy to read, and with my book, I joked that I wrote it at a 4th grade level because that was the only level that I could actually write at. So my book is very easy to read, but yours is incredibly impactful. It's intelligent. I wanted to leave people with what's next. I always like to leave people with what's next. So what's next for you seems to be you're going to innovate again.
Yeah.
You and Carl Gould, your business partner, and Tatiana.
Yeah.
Talk to us about your new opportunity.
So being around the real estate environment for the last decade, actually serving as board of directors, but also 25 years doing corporate training. So let's say 35 years technically being around the real estate industry. 57% of real estate agents don't pay their income tax on time. And I also see that we have an aging population of people in North America. So I always look at disruptive business models like we've done with EXP. So I always say, what's the next thing to disrupt certain things? And so if we look at the accounting and bookkeeping industry, really boring industry, it's a regulated industry. You have to go to school to get a designation to become a CPA, a chartered professional accountant, right? So right now, the average CPA in North America is 61 years of age. Him or her, they're a baby boomer. So between now and the year 2030, over 100,000 licensed CPAs are going to retire and exit as baby boomers. And they have a book of business, they have a accounting firm practice or bookkeeping practice that they built up for over several years, some even decades.
There's value there,
Absolutely.
And those customers don't really want to change.
Yeah, the data shows in North America that the average business person will stay with an accountant for 17 years. That's the average life of a client is 17 years.
Wow.
Okay, they got all the data. And that's pretty good, low attrition rate, right? And so the thing is, with the accounting bookkeeping industry, it's an industry where accountants don't like risk, they don't like change. So myself being an entrepreneur, being somebody who sees opportunities, I thought with my partner Carl Gould, I said, why don't we go out and raise private money, a pool of capital, pay our investors 12% annual return over a 1-year term, and then let's go start to acquire these accounting bookkeeping firms that are off-market deals through my network of other CPAs. So I've got some friends of mine across North America that are CPAs that love numbers and love people, but they're extrovert. So not your traditional reserve analytical accountant. They love people, but they love numbers. And then they go to a lot of networking events and a lot of accounting and bookkeeping trade shows and conferences and workshops throughout North America. So they're always networking with the accountants, finding out who's going to retire, or who's going to sell their firm or their practice, right? So we get leads sourced to us of off-market deals, and because there's a commission or an affiliate or referral fee being paid to these people. So like one firm we're actually closing on tomorrow. The CPA who referred it to us, about 3-4 hours of work, he'll make $20,000 commission. So he's a numbers guy, right? So he's thinking, man, I can go out and get all these clients and do all this billable work for my clients, but I can make 20 grand just networking at trade show associations, then source them to Darren and Carl and Tatiana.
Wow.
So we're building a $50 million company because here's the thing, it's easier to acquire revenue than to actually go out and create revenue. So for us to build a $50 million revenue company with monthly recurring revenue, it's easier to go out and acquire all these accounting firms, booking firms, and roll them up into one platform and grow and scale it.
Instead of grassrootsing it.
Yeah. So can you imagine how many conversations we'd have to have in trade shows and networking events and social media ads we'd have to run to have billable time of $50 million?
Right.
How many clients? So it's easier to acquire revenue than to create revenue.
Wow.
And so that's what we're doing now with Profit is we're building this up, and then we'll keep it for about 3 to 5 years, and then we'll probably sell it to one of the big 4 accounting firms or one of the private equity firms. Then we'll go through what we call a liquidity event, where we cash out, put money aside for our taxes, and then the rest of the money will be put into income-producing assets to bless and serve more people.
Beautiful.
And then we'll start something else after we exit that. So we built it with the end in mind to exit, but to solve a problem for the accountants and bookkeepers. And some of them will stay on with us. Some of them have no energy and they want to exit in their sunset time. But we bring them in and we keep the jobs and we keep the people and we make a difference. And the cool thing I like about it is it doesn't matter what the economy's doing, doesn't matter what the weather's doing. Guess the thing is you got to pay your taxes.
That's right.
Right? So it's something you can't avoid.
Right. Is there anything else you want to share with anybody?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is with things in life is that, in life we're either coming from a problem, we're in a problem, or we're heading towards a problem. Every human being on the planet goes through that. We're either coming from a problem, we're in a problem, or we're heading towards a problem. And realize that no matter where you're at right now, if you're thriving in your life or you're struggling in your life right now, it's a season. So if you look at life as being like the 4 seasons, you might be in wintertime right now. Things are not going the way you want them to go in your relationship or your health or your spiritual life or your finances, your job, career, business. You're in a wintertime right now. Some people are in a long winter cycle, but spring will come. And the way to get out of that and get into spring is through a network of conversations. Don't hold everything so close to yourself. Don't, put some cards on the table and have an authentic and vulnerable conversation and ask for help. Hey, look, I'm struggling in this area of my life right now. Can somebody help me? Now, sometimes people have to go away from their family, away from their environment, because those people are going to judge them and laugh at them and make fun of them. Step out of that environment into a different environment that's supportive and encouraging and collaborative. It could be at your church. It could be online. It could be through a Facebook community. It could be through LinkedIn. It could be some other group of people you get around, right? And start to have an authentic, vulnerable conversation about what's really going on. And what you'll realize, and just like people may watch who've been to AA or Narcotics Anonymous, the hardest thing is walking through the door. And I can remember when I was in Dale Carnegie and Toastmasters, the hardest thing for me was walking through the door. Because when I got on the other side of the door, I realized that everybody was afraid of public speaking. But they're there to get trained and developed on how to overcome the fear and the courage to actually public speak.
Absolutely.
But everybody in the room in those chairs all had a fear of public speaking.
Well, and I actually went through the Dale Carnegie sales training program and was an instructor or assistant instructor at one time.
Oh, fantastic.
Dale Carnegie was the first book that I read that changed my life.
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yep. And so I learned a lot in there. And one of the things I learned is that, hey, how do you learn to play the guitar? By playing the guitar. Yeah. So if you want to learn to public speak, then get in front of people. Yeah. So they force you to do that. So it's great training. Well, thank you, Darren, so much for donating your time. Here. It's an honor to call you a friend, and just I want to thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast, and I look forward to our growing relationship.
Yeah.
And next time, now that I know you better, I'll bring a carrot instead of a beef stick.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. Well, a big thank you for listening to the end of our podcast. I know your time is valuable, and I hope you got a few takeaways that are going to help you get a greater return on that time. I know you will. And if you did enjoy it, I'd sure appreciate a share or a comment. Feel free to subscribe for instant access to new episodes and offers. There's also a ton of free content and ways to learn more and engage more at WorleyRealEstateNetwork.com. Until then, we'll continue to bring you recipes for success and real stories from real people who, like you, are living out your divine purpose. And hey, God loves you. No matter what happens, don't give up.